Hey guys, welcome back to a Battlefield video. Yes, it has been 4 years since we've had a modern to near future shooter from DICE, and I am very happy to be bringing you this content today because we're going to be covering what I perceive as being the biggest issue among all the developers of the latest titles. And it's not necessarily about the performance of the beta as we experienced here in Battlefield, it was a beta, so there were things that we were anticipating to happen that did happen, and of course the community was quite concerned. But what I'm focusing on today is going to be about the fact that the publishers, the executives, the desk jockeys who want a product put out each year or every couple of years and not really catering to the OGs, the original players, your core players, the players that make the game what it is. In other words, the community of players that have been around probably since the inception of the game, who knows what works, who knows what the community likes, and knows what fellow core players and veterans enjoy about the game. And we're seeing publishers, we're seeing these executives create games to try to reach a wider audience, or as big of audience as they can, and this is disenfranchising a great deal of the people in the community, whether that's Battlefield or in Call of Duty. One of the unique things that sets Battlefield apart from other shooters is the fact that we have vehicles, and I am a huge fan of planes, jets, tanks, and helicopters, and in this particular build, it felt very much like a press build because we were actually limited to the pilot settings being for both the fixed-wing aircraft and the helicopter, which are played entirely differently. So the experience was a bit odd, and as we understood from some other posts, the developers apparently had made sure that the control settings or the controllers were the default setting. So when people tried to use their joysticks or other controller devices outside of, a console controller, it wouldn't work correctly. And some of my guildmates tried it, and all that would happen was their helicopter or jet would simply spin in circles. So DICE, in an effort to meet the expectations of the publishers, or more specifically the executives, they went with this hybrid system. I'm running with McKay, who was the default character. He has the VK-30, his sidearm, and then his dedicated gadget, which is the grapple hook. He also came defaulted with the rocket launcher, but I went with the ammo crate, and he has grenades. Now, all the characters can revive, as I'm doing here. However, I think it's only partially, versus if you had a medic, you could revive the character all the way to full health. To complicate the hybrid system even further, you see my two guildmates, Night Raven and Zeke, are both running as Casper, the recon sniper, and then on the Russian side, it is Boris, who looks identical to them. The only distinguishing factors is my squad mates are in green and my teammates are in blue. So this hybrid system made things very complicated. Now, above their heads, you see that they have the recon icon. Now, one thing I wasn't able to test because we didn't have a comma rose to communicate or VoIP to communicate via voice is whether or not when that icon is either an ammo crate or a health crate, whether or not we can get ammo or a health crate just off of the player by going up and hitting our use key. And since there was no comma rose or VoIP, we couldn't request anything from any players, so it can be difficult to distinguish the players. And because this is a hybrid system, both of my guildmates could have been running with a health crate or they could have been running with an ammo crate in this particular case, but they would still be Casper and the enemy would still be Boris. I believe I had those names correct. It was a bit confusing. So an additional mechanic that was added was the T-System attachment. That was quite nice. I think this was pretty well received among the community, and it really comes in handy situationally. Whether you're at long range, medium range, or short range, you can change up that sight to make sure that you are better prepared for the engagement. As well as people found it handy to be able to change out their primary magazine that may be low on ammo to a secondary magazine with additional ammo, although it was a different caliber. I found the sentry gun to be a very nice gadget, and when well placed, particularly around the C flag where there's all this heavy foliage, you're able to use it to not only spot, but it can also distract the enemy as well as keep you protected. Right here, I just got an assist from the sentry gun, and in just a moment it's going to spot a player or an enemy player just behind those rocks to the right, so that way I know where the enemy is. So I do like that spotting capability. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to take him out because of the rock, but nonetheless, it does provide a nice spotting mechanic, as well as gives you some level of protection around this C flag. I found it to be incredibly handy. After the sentry gun did its job, I went to pick it up and I fell through the map. I don't know if you could grapple your way out if you were playing McKay, but I was out of bounds and just eventually had to wait until my character died. We had a nice variety of vehicles in this particular beta. Unfortunately, my B Bravo button wasn't working, so I wasn't able to call in a vehicle or even the new robot dog, so I was relegated to using vehicles from the deploy screen. I felt kind of badly continuing my helicopter practice because, as you can see in this vehicle, as soon as you get into a vehicle, and many people joked about how this was run field because the map was so large, people would get into whatever vehicle you were trying to use, and then of course if I was flying a helicopter I would crash and then get my teammates killed. Overall, I think the development team did a very nice job with vehicles. The refresh at deploy, as well as being able to call in the vehicles, felt very good considering this was a medium-sized map, and of course we are going to have even larger maps. In Battlefield 2042, we have a new introduction to environmental damage along with fire and shrapnel, and that is cold. And as you see here around these spherical containers, as well as other parts of the map that have, I guess, liquid nitrogen, your screen turns a blue hue color. If you stay there long enough, you will start to sustain damage. So along with the weather dynamics, as we see with the tornado coming up, you can sustain damage now from cold as well as from the dynamic weather. Weather isn't anything particularly new to Battlefield. In Battlefield 4, we had Paracel Storm, and as the name implies, there was a storm, at least occasionally. And here in Battlefield 2042, we have this amazing weather dynamic of this tornado, which starts to glitch out your UI as you get close to it. And as you fly around in it, you can take damage from debris, the same as with vehicles. If you fly a helicopter or jet into the tornado, you can get damage and or even die within the tornado. And it is kind of a new, interesting feature to the map. Now, like anything else, it is kind of a novelty, and eventually people will kind of just dismiss it. But nonetheless, the tornado did add a nice, interesting effect to the gameplay. We had a nice variety of weapons to try out with our operators, and of course you could run with any primary that you wanted. For me personally, I really enjoyed the VK30 as well as the PBX45. They were great to mid-range and close range. I did try out some of the DMRs as well as the sniper rifles, but I wasn't having as much success with those. I don't know if there was an input issue or maybe the latency, or just the fact that it's a beta. I know that several people we saw throughout the beta were saying that they were having issues with these particular firearms. I don't know whether it was exclusive to, say, console or PC. I was playing on PC. It wasn't terrible, but it just didn't feel completely right. So for now, I'm just going to chalk it up as being part of the beta, and I didn't go back and revisit the weapons as we were getting close to the end of the beta, but absolutely did enjoy my weapon experience overall. This particular beta, in comparison to other Battlefield betas or even Call of Duty, felt very restricted. This felt very much like a press release. Even within the settings, we were limited to what we could choose. I think the community was very vocal. There was a lot of those who were not very happy, but at least we had levels of constructive feedback to the development team. Because going back to what I said originally, I think a lot of these release titles are more affected by the publisher or the corporate desk jockeys who don't play the game. I am convinced that the developers are totally aware of what players like, particularly the OGs and the core players. The developers are probably just as frustrated and irritated and annoyed as the players are. I hope that both the Battlefield community as well as the Call of Duty community understand that the developers are aware of what we like as players, because they're the ones looking at the telemetry, they're the ones looking at the metrics, they're the ones looking at the heat mapping of where players go, what players are doing, what players like, and what's worked in the past. And that's how players are making these sorts of distinctions. Players know what's worked for them in the past, what they've liked from previous titles, and many people say, why not just copy paste what was in the previous game and put it in the new game? And I think a lot of that comes down to, again, the publishers trying to just come up with things that are going to attract players to the game, as opposed to focusing on the core players, your OGs, the players that you know are going to purchase the game. I think they're playing a very, very dangerous game here of just relying on the OGs and the core players to purchase the game, while also operating from a position that newer players will come to the game if they introduce these new mechanics. All right, guys, so that's going to wrap it up for this look at the Battlefield 2042 beta from this particular veteran's experience. I'd love to hear your thoughts down there in the comments, as well as if you've already ordered the game and what you anticipate from it. And appearing there on the screen, that would be the channel icon if you'd like to subscribe, as well as clicking on notifications. That way you know when there's additional Battlefield content here on the channel, as well as checking out those video shorts. And I will see you guys in the next video.